Our next speaker, we are pleased to have another Jane. Jane is not a very common name, so I'm excited. Jane is from the, she's representing the Senior Medicare Patrol High Cap. Jane, I'm not even sure. But anyway, she's going to be talking to you about Medicare fraud, which is just rampant, and just she has so much good information. So, Jane, come on up.
Thank you. I got the sexiest topic, didn't I? The one that everybody wants to hear about. You can't hear me? Still can't hear me? How's that? Thank you. I am with an organization called the Senior Medicare Patrol, SMP, and we actually work out with other organizations. There's in San Mateo County, it's called High Cap. I'll just explain briefly. The government loves acronyms, so everything they do is usually connected to something with a string of letters in front of it. So I'll try to explain that. Every state has a SHIP organization, S-H-I-P, which stands for Health. Now I can't even remember. Health insurance programs, and what they do is work with any kind of health insurance program. In California, we're different for everything we do. We call ours High Caps, which is health insurance counseling and advocacy programs. So what do? We work with people who have issues, concerns, questions, or problems with Medicare. This is a very busy time of the year. The annual enrollment period for Medicare just started and goes until December 7th. I'm sure most of you know that. Let me tell you briefly again what the Senior Medicare Patrol does. We are funded, it's a government agency, and it's funded by the Administration on Aging. The purpose is to teach Medicare beneficiaries how to protect their personal identity, identify and report problems or errors on their health bills, and identify deceptive or fraudulent health care-related practices. There are 27 counties in California who have SMP liaisons such as myself. So the message that we have is pretty simple, is protect from fraud and abuse, detect potential errors, fraud and abuse, and report them. And it's already been pointed out, unfortunately, many or most things are never reported. When fraud has taken place, people are usually embarrassed, humiliated, don't want anybody to know, so they don't tell. So why is Medicare important? There's a reason. There's a reason. It's called Sutton's Law. Sutton's Law was named for Willie Sutton, the famous bank robbery. When they asked him, why do you rob banks? His answer was, because that's where the money is. Why is Medicare a good place for the scammers? Because that's where the money is. Last year, I would tell you that the SMP program was responsible for recouping more than $2 million just in California. I tell you that because when you get interested in the subject, if you have something that happens to you that is fraud and you work to recoup the money, you can actually get up to 15% of the money that's recouped. That means actually repaid now, so remember that. But nevertheless, you can participate and you can come out ahead. Again, why Medicare? the age group of people who are in Medicare are perceived to have a certain characteristics. You have a stable income, may not be large, or it may be large, usually not, but it's stable, it's a regular income. A lot of it is based on what is called affinity fraud, meaning somebody you trust. Most successful scammers can be located in your church or in your neighborhood group. I worked with a client right here in Foster City recently who had an insurance agent who was a member of the congregation and was selling to her friends and neighbors, and they trusted her because they went to church with her. The most recent one that's been a big hit, what happened on October 1st? Well, two things. The Affordable Care Act went into effect and the government shut down. The Affordable Care Act opened the door for scammers to have whole new opportunities they had not had before, which was to try to confuse the two things of Medicare and the California exchange. And so they kind of came out of the woodwork, particularly with the telephone scammers, because what they were doing is calling people to say, you are going to get a new Medicare card. And the reason is because it's going to cover the parts of the California marketplace. And I'll just tell you again about this one person that I dealt with. She is not what you would call a confused old lady. She was a very savvy woman who was very recently retired from being employed by an attorney. And so this caller called her to tell her that he was going to send her a new Medicare card, and she was unaware that she needed a new Medicare card, so he explained that was the reason why. And he said he was really calling to just confirm the information that he already had, and that he would like to do that with her. And so she said, go ahead, and he said, well, your telephone number is blah, blah, blah. Of course he knew that, he just called her. Your address is blah, blah, blah. Yes, that's correct. He said, no, where do you bank now? And she said, Republic Bank. And he said, oh, I see, and your numbers are blah, 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 and he reads off a list of numbers. He said, but I can't read the last digits. Could you give me get your digit? And she says, well, I don't have my bank book. And he said, well, I'll wait while you go get it, because this is important. So she did, and she came back with her bank book, and he said, I just need the last digits, I have everything else. And being the savvy lady that she was, she said, well, this is what Jane just told you earlier. She said, I have been told you should not give your information out to someone who calls you. He said, that's very clever of you. He said, I'm proud of you for knowing that. That's exactly right. He said, I'm going to give you another number and you can call me back and give me the information. And she took down the number and called back. And again, being a savvy lady, she says, I see from my caller ID that you're located in Florida. I thought Medicare was in Washington. And he says, we have offices all over the United States. Anyway, she did place the call back and give them the number, because at that point she thought they already had everything and this is not a problem. Now, what's the takeaway in that? Do you realize that if you and I have the same bank, we have the same routing number. It's public information. They can get it online. So if they ask you where do you bank, if you say the Bank of America, for example, your routing number is easily obtained. He's got it already written down in front of him. So the only digits at the end are the only ones that matter. So again, be very careful what you assume. If it seems to you they know everything about you already, it's because they almost do. Okay. The problem is you would not necessarily ever know your number was used. I can give you great examples from actual people and actual cases that I have dealt with. Do you ever hear the scooter store? The scooter store. I'm happy to tell you the scooter store is out of business. They're out of business. They were forced into bankruptcy by fraud investigators. The reason they were successful is the interesting part. What they were doing was selling motorized wheelchairs and vehicles of that sort. And in order to have Medicare pay for it, the deal that they would say is, you don't have to do anything, we'll take care of this for you. The reason is, if you need a wheelchair, you need a doctor to prescribe it, just like a prescription for a drug. They would simply bypass this part, and they would have their own doctor write a prescription for you. Anyway, that was the scooter store, but it has all kinds of variations on that. There was a person actually in Palo Alto who thought that her father was going to be needing a wheelchair in the coming months. And so she did her research and called a place to inquire how it worked and what it would cost and so forth. And before the end of the week, UPS delivered a wheelchair for her. Well, that was a surprise to her, and she got busy to find out how this could have happened. And the following day, a second wheelchair arrived. That got out of hand very quickly, but it kept her busy trying to sort it out for a long time. So the problem with it is sometimes these things are ordered for individuals using another person's Medicare number is the reason why you have to protect your Medicare number. If your Medicare number is compromised, it's not the same thing as your credit card getting compromised. When that happens, what happens? The credit card company cancels the card and issues a new one with a new number. That's not going to happen with Medicare. Your Social Security number is still yours after it's been compromised. And so that everything that happens after that is a mess, and it's always a complicated thing and can keep recurring because then it's integrated into the computer system. So benefits that you might need in the future, you may find out it's already been given to somebody else and you didn't know about it. By the time you leave here today, you've gotten the message to be careful about who you trust and so forth. I would caution you not get too crazy with that when it comes to your medical bills. When you get a Medicare summary notice, read it, verify that what is on it is true. Did you see a doctor that day? Is that your number? Is that your doctor? Did you have that x-ray, that blood test on that day? There are many instructions. You may say they've gone too far with it on telling you how to deal with if you have a question or a concern. My advice to you would be to do not ever throw those away. I'm always shocked to see how casually people treat them sometimes. So don't throw it away. Get an envelope or a folder and keep it in chronological order would be a good idea. And match it up with the bills that come with it. But recognize that most of the problems that occur in healthcare billing are in fact data entry or simple errors. They're usually not fraud, but be careful and verify if it is. An example would be if you go to, let's say, Stanford, and you have a procedure or see a doctor, when the bill comes or when you see it on your Medicare summary notice, it may be a name you've never seen before because the billing, the way that billing is done can be very complex, and they use certain doctors' names for billing purposes that may not be the actual person that you saw. So that's why I said don't get too crazy with looking for fraud everywhere, but verify how it is connected to you or if it is connected to you, and don't throw them out. One thing you do need to know is many people get concerned about the idea of fraud is going on if they get a copy of their hospital bill and see there was a charge for $16 for an aspirin. They get very concerned. Do not concern yourself with that kind of thing. I'll just explain briefly that hospitals who bill Medicare guide some of their billing areas into what are called DRGs, which is a diagnostic-related group. And it's a way of lumping similar charges for contracting purposes. It works in the long run. So if you see something, one charge or one example like that, don't get too excited with it, but again, keep the big picture in mind. So the best way to protect yourself from fraud in Medicare is to be informed. You need to know that Medicare or Social Security does not call individuals, ever. Anybody who calls and says they're calling for Medicare or about Medicare is not. Okay? There is no new Medicare card. You don't have to update one or get a new one or confirm anything. Regarding the Affordable Act, Obamacare, if you have Medicare, you do not have to do anything, period. If you want to change your coverage, your Medicare Advantage supplement, or your Medigap coverage, or your Part D coverage, you're in open enrollment season right now. It's the time to do it. Review your coverage and see if you want to make changes or not. There are some changes that are being forced in the area with some of the contractors are not renewing their coverage, like Health Net, for example, out of the Palo Alto Medical Foundation, is not renewing some of its contracts, and United Healthcare through AARP is not. And so some of your choices will be changing. So I do recommend you be sure to take a look at it and be sure you are in the right place that you want to be for right now. Don't respond to cold calls of any kind. I have people tell me every day, it's very interesting. I had a guy tell me last week that he kept a pad and a paper by his phone, and he wrote down when they called. And he would yell at them, say, "You've called me 5 times in the last 3 days." I have others, people, they pretend they don't speak English. They do all manner of things to pretend to be interested, to drag out the conversation. Maybe it's a challenge for you, I don't know. I hope nobody's really that bored, but don't do that. Don't do that. Do not engage with these people. Just hang up. Don't trust your caller ID. Remember the example I told you before? The woman says, "Oh, you're calling from Florida." She had caller ID. She knew that it was not a local call. But the phone system, you know, they're pretty good at channeling numbers around. So if it's from out of the country or, you know, Florida or any place else, it can say that it's from someplace else that looks legitimate to you. So don't trust that. If anything is free, you don't have to do anything. Free is free, but generally it's not free. They want something in exchange. So that the word free is a red flag to you. If it's limited time offer, that's also a red flag. Many of you have already verified you're on the computer. I have to tell you, you have to be careful there too. Again, I'll give you an example with the Affordable Care Act. This just happened last week. Or it took them only a week to do this. This was just, I was just at a conference where I was told about this, but the website for the California Market Exchange is coveredca.gov. The scammers set up a new website called coveredcalifornia.gov. Now, who would know if you were search for the California Exchange, that might be the first one that comes up, and it was. Actually, the Department of Corporations was able to shut that website down. But anyway, again, things are not what they appear to be. So what I want to leave you with is protect your personal information, guard your Medicare card like a credit card, but better. It's best if you don't carry it around with you when you go anywhere. I know it's inconvenient sometimes when you go to the doctor or wish that you had brought it with you, but try to plan ahead and do that, but guard it very carefully. Learn how to read your Medicare summary notices. Keep them. Don't throw them out. If you lose your card, report it to Medicare, and they'll send you a new one. Report it. If you get scammed or know somebody who does, we don't go out and do citizens arrests. We'd like to sometimes, but we do have the connections to report it to the Office Inspector General, the FBI, or whatever organization is appropriate who does have the handcuffs so they can get used. And again, if just simply locally, if you have questions, if you think it's fraud, or if you have a question or concern, then contact somebody. The literature is over there, or you can call 1-800-MEDICARE and get a referral for any of these things. Your local agency for HICAP is available right here in San Mateo County. There's a little army of people there who are trained in Medicare and will help you through the process of working through any concern that you have about a Medicare problem, or to choose a new plan there, or about long-term care questions, or anything that's related to your health care questions and all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane.